The radio telescope dishes turned slowly against the star-filled sky. Dr. Maya Rodriguez walked between them in the cold night air, her breath making small clouds in the darkness. She had been working at the Kepler research station for 8 years, but she had never seen anything like this. The signal had started 3 months ago. At first, the computers thought it was just space noise. But Maya knew better. The pattern was too clean, too organized. Someone was trying to talk to Earth. Maya pushed open the door to the main building. Inside, her team was still working, even though it was past midnight. Computer screens glowed in the dark room, showing wave patterns and number sequences that made her head hurt. Any progress on the translation? Maya asked Dr. Kevin Murphy, who sat hunched over his keyboard. Kevin was the best language expert they had, but even he looked tired and confused. "It's getting clearer," Kevin said without looking up. "The basic structure is simple, once you understand their math. But Maya, you're not going to like what they're saying." Maya felt her stomach drop. She had been afraid of this. "Show me." Kevin pressed a button, and the main screen filled with text. Maya read it slowly, her hands getting cold despite the warm room. "Greetings to the species of the third planet from the Yellow Star. We are the Zephyrian Alliance, speakers for the Galactic Collective. Your world has been observed. Your technology level has been measured. You are now ready to join our family of civilized worlds." Maya kept reading. The message went on for several pages. But the important part was clear enough. You have 30 of your rotation cycles to prepare. Send representatives to prove your species is worthy of membership. There will be 5 trials. Combat skill. Technology use. Medical knowledge. Strategic thinking. Species strength. Failure means your world will be cleansed and prepared for better use. Maya sat down hard in the nearest chair. "Kevin, how many other worlds are in this collective?" Kevin scrolled down to another part of the message. "According to this, 847 species have joined so far. How many joined by choice?" Kevin was quiet for a long moment. 12. The room fell silent except for the humming of computers. Maya felt like the air had been sucked out of her lungs. 835 worlds had been destroyed because they failed these trials. "There's more," Kevin said quietly. "They sent technical data about the trials. Maya, they want us to send our best fighters. They call them apex predators. They want to see what Earth's most dangerous creatures can do." Maya laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "Apex predators? Do they want us to send lions? Bears? Sharks in spacesuits?" "I don't think that's what they mean," Kevin said. He brought up another screen. "Look at this data about previous trials. Every species that took these tests sent their strongest warriors, their toughest fighters, their most honored soldiers. And they all lost to something called the Krillian Berserkers." Maya studied the screen. The data showed battle records going back hundreds of years. Race after race had sent their champions. All of them had failed the final combat trial. All of their worlds had been destroyed or conquered. "We need to call Washington," Maya said, "and Moscow, and Beijing, and every other capital on Earth. This is bigger than any one country now." While Kevin made the calls, Maya walked outside again. The stars looked different now. Each point of light might be a world where people had lived and died. People who had received the same message Earth just got. People who had failed the same test Earth would have to take. She thought about what the aliens wanted. Apex predators. The most dangerous things Earth could produce. Maya had grown up on a farm in Texas. She knew about predators. She had seen coyotes hunt rabbits, hawks catch mice, spiders trap flies. But humans were different. Humans didn't just hunt other animals. Humans hunted each other. They had been doing it for thousands of years. Getting better and better at it? Maybe the aliens didn't understand what they were asking for. 3 days later, Maya found herself in the White House Situation Room. President Linda Carter sat at the head of a long table, surrounded by generals, scientists, and advisors from around the world. The room was crowded and tense. "Dr. Rodriguez," President Carter said, "you've studied this signal more than anyone. What do you think we're really dealing with?" Maya had been thinking about this question for 3 sleepless days. Madam President, I think we're dealing with an empire. A big one. They've been growing for a long time by absorbing other worlds. They make it sound like an invitation, but it's really a threat. General Robert Hayes, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, leaned forward. What about these trials? Can we win them? I don't know, Maya said honestly. But I've been studying the data they sent about previous tests. Every species that failed did the same thing. They sent their traditional warriors, their strongest fighters, their most honorable soldiers. And they all got beaten by these Krillian berserkers. So we need to send someone stronger. Asked Dr. Lisa Bennett, who ran special operations for the Navy. No, Maya said. I think we need to send someone smarter. The room was quiet. Maya took a breath and continued. The aliens said they want our apex predators. They think they know what that means. But I don't think they understand humans very well. They've conquered 847 worlds. But I bet none of those worlds were like Earth. What makes Earth different? President Carter asked. Maya had been hoping someone would ask that question. Most worlds probably had one main intelligent species that grew up in peace. Maybe they had some wars, but nothing like Earth. Humans have been fighting everything since the day we came down from the trees. We fight animals, we fight diseases, we fight the weather, we fight each other. We've gotten very good at fighting. General Hayes nodded slowly. So you think our military experience gives us an advantage? Maybe, Maya said. But not in the way you might think. Look at this data about the Krillian berserkers. They're big, strong, and covered in armor. They've been winning these trials for 60 years because they're tougher than everyone else. Then how do we beat them? Dr. Bennett asked. Maya smiled for the first time in days. We don't fight fair. The room erupted in arguments. Some people said humans had to maintain their honor. Others worried about making the aliens angry. A few generals started talking about nuclear weapons. President Carter raised her hand for silence. Dr. Rodriguez, explain what you mean. Every species that fought these trials played by the rules, Maya said. They sent their best warriors to fight with honor and courage. But humans learned a long time ago that honor doesn't matter if you're dead. We cheat. We lie. We use every dirty trick we can think of. And we win. Dr. Bennett was nodding now. Asymmetric warfare. Hit and run tactics. Psychological operations. Exactly, Maya said. The aliens want to see our apex predators. They think that means our strongest fighters. But they're wrong. Humans are apex predators because we're smart enough to kill anything, no matter how big or strong it is. President Carter looked around the room. How long do we have to prepare? Maya checked her notes. 27 days until the Zephyrian ships arrive. Then we have 3 days to present our team and begin the trials. Then we better get started, the president said. General Hayes, I want you to put together the best team Earth has ever seen. Not the strongest. Not the toughest. The smartest and most dangerous. As the meeting broke up, Maya stayed behind. President Carter walked over to her. Dr. Rodriguez, do you really think we can win this? Maya looked out the window at the city beyond. Millions of people going about their lives, not knowing that everything might end in a month. Madam President, the aliens made one big mistake. They told us what the test would be before we took it. That gives us something no other species had. What's that? Time to cheat. General Robert Hayes stood in the underground training facility beneath Fort Carson, Colorado. The place had been built in secret over the past 3 weeks, using alien technology blueprints that the Zephyrians had helpfully included in their message. Hayes still couldn't believe they had been stupid enough to give Earth a manual on how their equipment worked. Show me what we've got, Hayes said to Colonel Beth Turner, who had been working around the clock to put together Earth's team. 5 people, Turner said, leading him down a long hallway. Each one picked for a specific skill set, not the strongest or the fastest, but the smartest and most adaptable people we could find. The first door opened into a shooting range unlike anything Hayes had ever seen. Targets moved in 3 dimensions, appearing and disappearing behind cover. At the far end, A man with steady hands was putting holes through targets that most people couldn't even see. Sergeant Tony Williams, Turner said. Army Rangers. But he started as a hunter in Montana. His father taught him to shoot when he was 8 years old. He can hit a moving target at 1,200 yards in a crosswind. Hayes watched Tony adjust his rifle and fire again. Another impossible shot. Another perfect hit. The interesting thing about Tony isn't just his shooting, Turner continued. It's how fast he learns. We gave him an alien weapon 3 days ago. He had it figured out in 2 hours and was making modifications by the end of the day. They moved to the next room. Inside, a woman was working on what looked like alien medical equipment. Strange lights blinked on screens that showed biological data Hayes couldn't understand. Dr. Kevin Murphy, Turner said. Battlefield medic, but also a trauma surgeon and biochemist. He's been studying every piece of alien medical data we have. Kevin thinks he can treat injuries on any species that breathes oxygen and has blood. Hayes watched Kevin work. The man's hands moved quickly and confidently, like he had been using alien equipment his whole life. Kevin grew up in Detroit, Turner explained. His neighborhood had one of the highest crime rates in America. He learned to treat gunshot wounds and stab wounds before he was old enough to drive. Then he went to medical school and learned the science behind what he already knew how to do. The third room looked like a flight simulator, but the controls were all wrong. Instead of familiar buttons and switches, everything was covered in alien symbols and touchscreens. A woman sat in the pilot's seat, flying through a complex course on the main display. Captain Lisa Bennett, Turner said. Navy SEALs for 12 years, then she transferred to test pilot school. Lisa can fly anything with wings, rotors, or engines. She's been working with our engineers to understand alien vehicle controls. Hayes watched Lisa navigate through a series of obstacles that would have crashed any normal pilot. Her movements were smooth and confident. The aliens sent us flight manuals for their ships, Turner said. Lisa found 17 different ways to override their safety systems. She thinks she can make their vehicles do things they were never designed to do. The fourth room was filled with computers and wall screens showing tactical displays. A man sat in the center, moving pieces around like he was playing the world's most complicated chess game. Major Danny Clark, Turner said. Strategic planning, but his specialty is unconventional warfare. Danny spent 6 years in Afghanistan figuring out how to fight enemies who didn't follow any rules. Hayes looked at the displays. They showed different battlefield scenarios with human forces fighting against much larger alien armies. In every simulation, humans were winning. Danny has been studying every piece of data we have about alien military tactics, Turner explained. He says most alien species fight like humans did 200 years ago. Big armies, direct attacks, predictable strategies. Danny's specialty is making the enemy think they know what you're going to do, and doing something completely different. The last room was different from the others. It looked like a gym, but also like a laboratory. A woman was working out with equipment that measured every movement she made. Sensors tracked her heart rate, breathing, muscle tension, and brain activity. Captain Amy Foster, Turner said. Special operations, but also a psychologist and interrogation expert. Amy's job is to get inside people's heads and figure out what makes them work. Hayes watched. Amy moved through a complex series of exercises. She looked strong, but not unusually so. What impressed him was how she seemed to know exactly what her body was doing at all times. Amy has been studying video recordings of the Krillian berserkers, Turner said. She thinks their biggest strength is also their biggest weakness. They get angry when they fight, and angry people make mistakes. Hayes nodded slowly. What about the aliens who are coming to observe? The Zephyrians. That's where things get interesting, Turner said, leading him to a conference room. 3 of their ships arrived yesterday. They are in orbit now, watching everything we do. They sent down an ambassador to meet with our team. The conference room had a large table surrounded by chairs. At one end sat something that Hayes had trouble looking at directly. It was tall and thin, made of what looked like living crystal. When it moved, light bent around it in strange ways. General Hayes, the creature said, in perfect English. I am Ambassador Kethver of the Zephyrian Alliance. I have come to observe your preparation for the trials. Hayes sat down across from the alien. Ambassador, I hope you're finding Earth interesting. Very interesting, Kethver said. The creature's voice had a musical quality that made Hayes feel slightly dizzy. Your species is most unusual. When we informed other worlds of the trials, they immediately began training their largest and strongest warriors. You have chosen small, soft creatures instead. Our team is exactly what we want to send, Hayes said carefully. Curious, the alien said. I've observed your people practicing with our equipment. They seem more interested in how it works than in how to use it properly. This is not the behavior we expect from a warrior species. Colonel Turner leaned forward. Ambassador, could you tell us more about the Krillian berserkers? We'd like to know what we're facing. The alien made a sound that might have been laughter. The Krillians are the finest warriors in the galaxy. They stand 8 feet tall and are covered in natural armor. They have dominated the combat trials for 60 standard cycles. No species has ever developed an effective strategy against them. What makes them so effective? Hayes asked. Pure aggression, Kethver said. They attack directly and overwhelm their opponents through superior strength and ferocity. Most species attempt to match their combat prowess and fail. It is a simple but successful approach. Hayes and Turner exchanged glances. Simple and successful, but also predictable, Ambassador Turner said. The trials test more than just combat ability, don't they? Indeed, the alien said. Technology adaptation, medical knowledge, strategic thinking, and species resilience. But the combat trial is the final test. Failure there means death for your representatives and destruction for your world. After the alien left, Hayes and Turner walked back through the training facility. The 5 team members were still working, still learning, still preparing. Colonel Hayes said, Do you think they understand what they're getting into? Turner watched Amy Foster, studying psychological profiles of previous trial participants. General, I think the aliens are the ones who don't understand what they're getting. Explain. Every species that took these trials before us sent their best traditional warriors. Warriors who fight with honor, who follow rules, who try to win through courage and strength. But that's not what we're sending. Hayes looked at Tony Williams, was now taking apart an alien weapon to see how it worked. What are we sending? Soldiers, Turner said simply. People who have spent their entire lives learning how to kill things that are bigger, stronger, and tougher than they are. People who cheat, lie, and break every rule if that's what it takes to complete the mission. Hayes watched Kevin Murphy, who was now studying alien anatomy charts and making notes about weak points and pressure points. The aliens keep calling our team soft and small, Turner continued. They think that means we're weak. They don't understand that humans became the dominant species on Earth not because we were the biggest predators, but because we were the smartest. Hayes saw Danny Clark working on battle plans that involved deception, misdirection, and tactics that would be considered dishonorable by most military standards. Amy thinks the psychological profile data shows something interesting, Turner said. The aliens have been conquering worlds for so long that they've forgotten what it's like to fight someone who actually wants to win instead of just putting up a good fight. Hayes watched Lisa Bennett, who was now working on ways to disable alien ships from the inside. Colonel, he said finally, I think the Zephyrians made a mistake when they gave us time to prepare. Yes, sir, Turner agreed. They should have attacked immediately. Now they're going to learn what happens when you give humans a month to figure out how to kill. You. Hayes looked around the facility one more time. 5 people. Not the strongest or the toughest. Certainly the most dangerous Earth had to offer. Let's go win this thing, he said. The Zephyrian trial station was bigger than anything Captain Lisa Bennett had ever seen. It stretched across space like a metal city, with towers and platforms connected by glowing bridges. The station orbited a neutron star that painted everything in strange blue light. Lisa piloted the human transport ship through a docking bay that could have held a dozen aircraft carriers. Around them, Other ships brought representatives from across the galaxy. Some vessels looked like living creatures with wings and tentacles. Others were geometric shapes that hurt to look at directly. First time seeing this many alien species in one place. Pressing his face against the window. "Stay focused," Dr. Kevin Murphy warned. "Remember what we practiced. Every interaction is intelligence gathering. Every conversation is a chance to learn something that might save our lives." Captain Amy Foster was already studying the aliens. They could see through the docking bay windows. "Look at their body language. Most of them seem nervous or scared. A few look angry, but in a frustrated way, not a confident way. They're here because they have to be," Major Danny Clark observed. "Just like us. But they think they're going to die. We're going to prove them wrong." The human team walked through corridors filled with beings from hundreds of different worlds. Some were tall and thin, others short and wide. A few floated in containers filled with liquid. Many looked at the humans with curiosity, like they were examining some strange new animal. Ambassador Kethfer met them at the registration area. The crystal aliens seemed amused by something. "Humans," Kethfer said in that musical voice, "you continue to surprise us. Most species arrive with elaborate weapons and armor. You have brought simple equipment and these small carrying cases." Lisa smiled politely. The cases contained tools and supplies that looked innocent but could be turned into weapons or equipment if needed. "We prefer to travel light, Ambassador Curious," the alien said. "Come, I will show you to your quarters. The trials begin tomorrow with the technology adaptation test." There, rooms were comfortable but clearly designed for observation. Amy had found 3 different types of surveillance devices within the first hour. Rather than disable them, she had Danny spread false information while Tony and Kevin worked on their real preparations in areas she had confirmed were not being watched. The first trial took place in a large arena filled with hundreds of alien spectators. The test area contained tables covered with equipment that looked like nothing any human had ever seen. Geometric shapes connected to flowing liquids, connected to things that might have been computers. "Each team has 1 hour," announced the Zephyrian judge. "A creature that looked like a walking tree made of metal. You must combine these technologies to solve the power regulation problem. Failure to complete the task results in elimination." Lisa looked at the equipment. None of it made sense according to human technology, but she had spent weeks learning to think like an alien engineer. The key was to stop trying to understand what things were supposed to do and focus on what they actually did. "Tony, test the energy outputs on those crystal things," she said quietly. "Kevin, see if those liquid tubes respond to pressure changes. Danny, map the connection points. Amy, watch the other teams and tell me what they're doing wrong." The other teams were struggling. A group of tall, thin aliens with too many arms kept trying to connect incompatible systems. A team of what looked like intelligent rocks was moving too slowly to finish in time. A group of flying creatures couldn't manipulate the equipment properly with their wing hands. "They're all trying to use the equipment the way it was designed," Amy observed. "Look at the manuals they were given. They're following the instructions exactly," Lisa nodded. That was the mistake. She had learned in test pilot school that sometimes you had to make equipment do things it was never supposed to do. "Tony, what happens if you reverse the power flow through that crystal array?" "It gets really hot and starts glowing brighter," Tony said. "Kevin, can you use that heat to expand the liquid in those tubes?" "Yes, and the pressure change activates those mechanical switches." "Danny, if we use the switches to bypass the safety systems on that control unit, what happens?" "We get about 10 times more power output than the system was designed for." Lisa smiled. "Perfect. Amy, start a timer. Let's solve this in 30 minutes and make everyone else look slow." The human solution worked perfectly. The other teams were still trying to figure out basic connections when Lisa's team activated their improvised power system. The Zephyrian judges looked confused but impressed. Humans advanced to trial. 2. The metal tree announced. The medical trial was Kevin's time to shine. The test involved treating simulated patients from different alien species. Each patient had different anatomy, different blood chemistry, different reactions to various treatments. The other medical The teams were struggling because they only knew how to treat their own species. A team of insect-like aliens could work on creatures with exoskeletons, but were helpless when faced with internal organ problems. A group of aquatic beings understood liquid-based biology but couldn't handle air-breathing patients. Kevin approached each patient like a puzzle to be solved. Instead of trying to apply treatments, he already knew. He studied each alien's biology and worked backward from the symptoms to find solutions. This patient has a circulatory system based on pressure differentials, he explained to Lisa while working on a blob-like creature. Human cardiac massage won't work. But if I can create rhythmic pressure changes in the right sequence, I can restart the circulation. Kevin saved patients that other teams had given up on. He improvised treatments using equipment designed for completely different purposes. When he ran out of proper medical tools, started using items from the technology trial, ingenious Ambassador Kethfer observed, "This human treats medicine like engineering. He builds solutions instead of applying formulas." The strategic planning trial put Danny against military commanders from across the galaxy. The scenario was simple. Defend a colony world against invasion using limited resources. Most of the alien commanders designed traditional defensive strategies. They placed their strongest units in the most obvious locations and planned to fight the enemy head-on. Their battle plans looked like textbook examples of conventional military doctrine. Danny's plan looked like chaos. Instead of defending key locations, he wanted to abandon them and let the enemy take them. Instead of using his best units to fight, he wanted to use them as bait. Instead of protecting civilians, he wanted to arm them and turn them into an insurgency force. "Explain your strategy," Human demanded the Zephyrian judge. "Simple," Danny said. "The enemy expects me to defend my most valuable assets. So I let them take those assets, but first I sabotage them. While they're busy trying to hold territory that's worthless to them and dangerous to occupy, my real forces attack their supply lines and retreat routes. This is not honorable combat," protested one of the alien commanders, a warrior who looked like an armored bear. "No," Danny agreed. "It's effective combat. Honor is what you worry about after you win." The combat preliminaries were Amy's specialty. Instead of fighting fair duels, she turned each match into a psychological battle. She studied her opponents during the pre-fight preparations and attacked their confidence instead of their bodies. Against a warrior who was clearly stronger and faster, Amy spent the entire fight running away and talking. She criticized his technique, questioned his courage, and pointed out every mistake he made. By the time she finally engaged in actual combat, her opponent was so angry and frustrated that he made easy mistakes. Against a fighter who relied on sophisticated technology, Amy used simple tactics that the technology couldn't counter. She threw sand, used improvised weapons, and fought in ways that confused the aliens' targeting systems. "Psychological warfare," Ambassador Kethfer noted. "This human turns her opponent's mind against itself." Each trial revealed the same pattern. The aliens expected humans to follow established rules and procedures. When the humans ignored those expectations and improvised their own solutions, they consistently outperformed much more physically capable opponents. "Your species is most unusual," Kethfer told Lisa after the preliminary trials ended. "You approach every challenge as if the rules are merely suggestions." "That's because they are," Lisa said. "Rules are made by people who want predictable results. But if you want to win, sometimes you have to do things that nobody expects." The aliens seem to consider this. Tomorrow, you face the final trial. Combat against the Krillian berserkers. They have never been defeated. They are larger, stronger, and more experienced than your team. "Good," Amy said. "That means they're overconfident. They have natural armor that can stop most weapons." Kethfer continued. "Interesting," Tony said. "I wonder what happens if you don't try to go through the armor." "They fight with berserker rage that has overcome every opponent they have faced," the alien added. "Rage makes you stupid," Danny observed. "Stupid enemies are easy enemies." Ambassador Kethfer looked at each human in turn. For the first time since they had arrived, the alien seemed genuinely uncertain. Are you not concerned about facing opponents who have never lost? Kevin shrugged. Ambassador, every disease was incurable until somebody found a cure. The combat arena was enormous. Captain Lisa Bennett stood with her team at one end, looking across a landscape that seemed designed to test every possible fighting skill. Rocky hills provided cover in some areas, while open plains offered no protection at all. A small forest of metal trees created a maze of narrow passages. Strange, alien plants grew in patches, some glowing with their own light. Remember the plan? Lisa said quietly to her team. We're not here to fight fair. We're here to win. Across the arena, 5 massive figures waited in perfect formation. The Krillian berserkers stood 8 feet tall, covered in natural armor that looked like black metal. Their faces were hidden behind helmets, but their red eyes glowed in the darkness. Each one carried weapons that seemed too heavy for normal creatures to lift. They're bigger than I expected, Sergeant Tony Williams said, checking his rifle one more time. Size doesn't matter if you can't hit your target, Captain Amy Foster replied. She was studying the berserkers through her scope, looking for weak points in their armor. Look at how they move, Major Danny Clark observed. Perfect coordination, but also predictable. They've done this exact formation hundreds of times. Double quotes. Dr. Kevin Murphy was examining the arena itself, not the enemy. The plants over there are bioluminescent. If we can damage them, they'll release spores that might interfere with their vision, and those metal trees conduct electricity if we can generate enough power. The Zephyrian judge floated above the arena, its metallic voice echoing across the space. Final trial begins now. Combat ends when one team cannot continue fighting. There are no other rules. The berserkers immediately charged forward in a straight line, their heavy footsteps shaking the ground. Their war cry was a sound like breaking metal that made several alien spectators cover their ears. The humans did exactly what no other species had ever done in 60 years of trials. They ran away. Scatter. Lisa shouted, and her team split up in 5 different directions. The berserkers, expecting a heroic stand, or at least some resistance, found themselves charging at empty air. They slowed down, confused. Looking around for targets that were no longer where they expected them to be, Tony had already reached high ground on a rocky hill. He set up his rifle and took careful aim at the lead berserker. Instead of trying to penetrate the creature's armor, he aimed for the joints where the armor plates connected. His first shot hit the berserker's knee joint. The armor didn't break, but the impact made the creature stumble. His second shot hit the same spot, creating a small crack. His third shot found the crack and punched through. The berserker roared in pain and anger, but its leg buckled slightly. Tony was already moving to a new position before the creature could locate him. Amy had circled around behind the berserkers while they were focused on Tony. She didn't attack directly. Instead, she started talking. "Is that the best you can do?" she called out, her voice echoing off the arena walls. "I thought you were supposed to be warriors. You look more like slow, clumsy animals to me." The berserkers turned toward her voice, their red eyes blazing with rage. That was exactly what Amy wanted. Danny was setting up his own surprise in the forest of metal trees. He had brought a small device that could generate electrical current. Connected to the conductive trees, it could create a web of electrical barriers that would force the berserkers to move where he wanted them to go. Kevin was working with the bioluminescent plants, carefully damaging them to release clouds of glowing spores into the air. The spores weren't dangerous, but they interfered with vision and made it harder to track moving targets. Lisa coordinated everything, moving between her team members and keeping track of where the berserkers were and what they were doing. The berserkers were getting more frustrated by the minute. They were used to enemies who stood and fought. These humans kept running, hiding, and attacking from unexpected directions. Every time the berserkers charged toward one human, that person would disappear and another would attack from somewhere else. The lead berserker, the largest and most decorated of the group, finally lost his temper completely. He threw down his weapons and charged straight at Tony's last known position. Roaring at the top of his lungs, he ran directly into Danny's electrical trap. The current wasn't enough to seriously hurt the armored creature, but it was enough to stun him and make his muscles lock up temporarily. While he stood there twitching, Tony put 3 more shots into the damaged knee joint. The berserker fell heavily, his armor clanking against the rocky ground. "First one down," Lisa said into her radio. For to go, the remaining berserkers were learning, but not fast enough. They started moving more carefully, watching for traps. But this just made them easier targets for Tony, who could now predict where they would step. Amy continued her psychological warfare, taunting them and making them angry. Every insult made them a little more careless, a little more likely to make mistakes. "You call yourselves warriors?" she shouted. "My grandmother could fight better than this, and she's been dead for 10 years? One of the berserkers couldn't take it anymore. He broke formation and charged toward Amy's voice. She led him on a chase through the metal forest, where Danny's electrical barriers channeled him exactly where the humans wanted him to go. Kevin was waiting with a surprise. He had rigged one of the alien plants to explode when stepped on, releasing a massive cloud of spores directly into the berserker's face. The creature couldn't see anything, stumbling around blindly while Tony lined up another shot. This berserker fell into a pit that Danny had disguised with loose rocks and debris. The fall didn't hurt him much, but it put him in a position where he couldn't defend himself effectively. 2 down, Lisa reported. The 3 remaining berserkers finally started working together properly. They moved in a tight formation, covering each other's backs and advancing slowly toward the human positions. This was clearly a tactic they had learned from previous failures, but the humans had been expecting this too. Lisa appeared in the open ground in front of the berserkers, apparently making herself an easy target. When they charged toward her, she ran toward the exact spot Danny had prepared. Hidden under the ground was an improvised explosive device made from alien equipment they had modified during the previous trials. It wasn't powerful enough to kill the berserkers, but it was enough to throw them off balance and separate them from each other. The explosion scattered the 3 remaining berserkers across the arena. Now they were isolated, confused, and facing opponents who had been planning for this exact moment. Tony took down the 3rd berserker with a series of precision shots to the creature's weapon arm. Without his massive sword, the berserker was much less dangerous. Amy and Kevin worked together to trap him in another electrical barrier, while Danny moved in to disable him completely. The 4th berserker was the smartest of the group. Instead of charging blindly, he found cover and tried to wait for the humans to come to him. This might have worked against traditional opponents, but the humans had no intention of fighting fairly. Kevin had prepared a chemical mixture from the alien plants that produced a gas heavier than air. The gas wasn't poisonous, but it made breathing difficult and caused dizziness. They pumped it into the berserker's hiding spot using improvised equipment. When the creature finally came out, gasping for clean air, Tony was ready with another precise shot. This one targeted the berserker's helmet. Cracking the faceplate and interfering with his vision, Amy attacked from behind while the creature was distracted. Using a weapon she had improvised from arena debris, she couldn't penetrate his armor, but she could make enough noise and confusion to keep him off balance while the others moved into position. The 4th berserker fell when Danny activated another electrical trap directly under his feet. For down. 1 to go, Lisa said. The last berserker was the youngest, but also the most dangerous. He had been watching the entire fight, learning from his teammates' mistakes. When he finally attacked, he did it smart. Instead of charging blindly, he moved carefully from cover to cover. Instead of falling for Amy's taunts, he ignored her completely. Instead of walking into traps, he found ways around them. For the first time in the entire fight, the humans were facing an opponent who was learning as fast as they were. The final confrontation took place in the center of the arena. The young berserker had cornered Lisa in an area with no cover and no escape routes. His massive sword was raised, ready to end the fight with a single blow. But Lisa wasn't trying to escape. She was exactly where she wanted to be. "Now," she shouted. Tony's shot hit the berserker's sword arm at the exact moment he was swinging. The impact threw off his aim just enough for Lisa to dodge. Amy appeared from nowhere, having used the arena's confusion to get into position. Kevin activated a final trap that sent electrical current through. The metal debris scattered around the area. Danny emerged from hiding with a weapon he had, built from parts of all the previous traps. It wasn't designed to kill, but to disable. The last berserker fell, not from any single attack, but from the coordinated efforts of all 5 humans working together with perfect timing. The arena fell silent, except for the sound of heavy breathing, settling debris. The humans stood in the center, tired but victorious. Around them, the Zephyrian Council Chamber was the largest room Captain Lisa Bennett had ever seen. It stretched for what seemed like miles in every direction. Thousands of seats arranged in perfect circles around a central platform. Representatives from hundreds of alien species filled those seats, all watching the 5 humans who stood in the middle. Ambassador Kethfer floated beside the humans, his crystalline form catching the light from the chamber's strange sun-like ceiling. For 3 days since the trial ended, he had been asking the same questions over and over again. "Explain once more how you defeated the berserkers," Kethfer said. Lisa sighed. They had been through this explanation dozens of times. The aliens seemed unable to understand the concept. "We studied them," she said patiently. "We watched how they fought, learned their patterns, and found their weaknesses. Then we used those weaknesses against them." "But this is not honorable combat," protested one of the council members, a creature that looked like a giant insect wearing elaborate robes. "Warriors should face each other directly, strength against strength." "Why?" Sergeant Tony Williams asked. "If the goal is to win, why would you limit yourself to only using strength?" The chamber erupted in confused murmuring. Several aliens spoke at once in languages that the translation systems couldn't handle. Finally, a voice rose above the noise. "Because that is how civilized beings conduct warfare," said High Counselor Zethmer. It's the leader of the Zephyrian Alliance. The creature was even more impressive than Ambassador Kethfer, made of what looked like flowing liquid metal that constantly shifted between different shapes. "Civilized according to who?" Major Danny Clark asked. "We're civilized too, but our definition seems to be different from yours." Dr. Kevin Murphy stepped forward. "High Counselor, may I ask a question? In all the trials you've conducted over the centuries, how many species have survived?" 12 species proved worthy of joining the collective voluntarily," Zethmer replied. 835 others were conquered and absorbed after failing the trials. "So your system has a failure rate of about 99%, Kevin observed. "From a medical perspective, I'd call that a completely ineffective treatment. Maybe the problem isn't with the species taking the trials. Maybe the problem is with the trials themselves." The chamber fell silent. Captain Amy Foster could see the confusion on the faces of aliens throughout the room. They had never considered that their system might be wrong. The trials test the qualities necessary for membership in a civilized galactic community, another council member said. This one looked like a tree with too many branches, each one ending in what might have been an eye. "What qualities?" Amy asked. "The ability to lose gracefully? The willingness to die rather than break rules that your enemies don't follow? If those are the qualities you value, then maybe you should ask yourself why you keep having to conquer people, instead of convincing them to join you voluntarily." High Counselor Zethmer shifted through several different shapes before settling on something that resembled a tall, thin humanoid made of silver liquid. "Your species is most disturbing," he said finally. "You approach every situation as if it were a problem to be solved rather than a test to be endured." "That's exactly right," Lisa said. "Because that's what problems are for. You solve them." "But what about honor?" demanded the insect-like council member. "What about courage? What about facing adversity with dignity? What about survival?" Tony replied. "What about protecting your people? What about making sure your children get to grow up?" "Your children will grow up," Zethmer said. "Earth has passed the trials. You have earned membership in the Galactic Collective." The humans exchanged glances. This was the moment they had been preparing for, but not in the way the aliens expected. "Thank you," Lisa said carefully. "But we have some conditions." The chamber erupted again. Aliens throughout the room made sounds of shock, anger, and confusion. Several species had representatives who stood up and began shouting in their native languages. Conditions? Zethmer repeated, his metallic form rippling with what might have been surprise. Species do not make conditions upon joining the collective. You accept membership and the responsibilities that come with it. What responsibilities? Danny asked. You will provide military service when required, Zethmer explained. You will contribute resources to the collective's expansion efforts. You will adopt our standards of civilized behavior. And if we refuse? Amy asked. Then you are classified as a hostile species and face immediate termination, the High Counselor said simply. Kevin laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. So our choices are slavery or death? That doesn't sound like membership. That sounds like conquest with extra steps. The collective has maintained galactic peace for thousands of years, protested the tree-like council member. Our system works. Your system works for you, Lisa corrected. But what about the 835 species you conquered? What about the ones you destroyed? Did your system work for them? Ambassador Kethfer floated closer to the humans. What conditions do you propose? Lisa had been hoping he would ask that question. First, Earth maintains complete independence. We'll consider alliance and cooperation, but we won't be ruled by anyone except ourselves. Impossible, Zethmer said immediately. Second, Lisa continued. Ignoring the interruption, any species that wants to leave the collective gets to leave. No conquest, no termination, no forced membership. Absolutely impossible, the High Counselor repeated. Third, Lisa said, the trial system ends. No more forcing species to prove their worthiness. If you want them to join you, convince them with benefits, not threats. The chamber was in chaos now. Hundreds of aliens were shouting, arguing, and demanding that the humans be removed immediately. Through it all, High Counselor Zethmer remained silent, his metallic form shifting through shapes that seemed increasingly agitated. Finally, he raised what might have been a hand, and the chamber fell quiet. These conditions are unacceptable, he said. The collective's authority cannot be questioned. Our system has maintained order for millennia. Then I guess we're at an impasse, Lisa said. No, Zethmer replied. You are at termination. Your species will be destroyed for refusing to submit to proper authority. Danny smiled. High Counselor, I don't think you understand the situation. Explain. You've spent the last month watching us. Prepare for your trials, Danny said. But we weren't just preparing to fight the berserkers. We were studying you. Your technology, your tactics, your weaknesses. Amy stepped forward. Every piece of equipment you gave us to train with, we took apart to see how it worked. Every ship that visited Earth, we scanned with every sensor we had. Every conversation with Ambassador Kethfer, we recorded and analyzed. Tony pulled out a small device that looked like nothing special. This little gadget can jam your communication systems, disable your ship controls, and turn your own weapons against you. We built it using components from your training equipment. Kevin held up another device. This one releases a virus that infects your computer networks. Not harmful to living beings, but very effective against crystalline technology matrices. You see, Lisa explained, while you were testing us, we were testing you. And we found something interesting. You're really not that impressive. High Counselor Zethmer's form began shifting rapidly between shapes. Impossible. Our technology is centuries beyond yours. Your technology is advanced, Danny agreed, but it's also predictable. You've been using the same systems for so long that you've forgotten how to adapt. You've conquered so many species that you've stopped learning from them. More importantly, Amy added, you've never faced anyone who was actively trying to figure out how to kill you. Every species you've conquered was trying to pass your tests. We were trying to find your weaknesses. Ambassador Kethfer floated between the humans and the council. What are you saying? We're saying that Earth doesn't need your protection, Lisa said. We're saying that your collective isn't as strong as you think it is. And we're saying that maybe it's time for you to learn what it's like too. Deal with people who don't want to be conquered. The chamber erupted in chaos again, but this time it was different. Some aliens were shouting in anger, but others seemed to be asking questions. A few were even laughing. High Counselor Zethmer shifted through several shapes before settling on something that looked almost human. "What do you propose?" he asked quietly. "Partnership," Lisa said. "Real partnership between equals. We'll share technology, knowledge, and resources. We'll help defend against actual threats. But we do it as allies, not as master and servant. And if we refuse," Tony shrugged, "then you can try to destroy Earth. But I should warn you, we've been preparing for that possibility too. And we've gotten very good at killing things that are bigger and stronger than we are." The High Counselor was quiet for a long time. Around the chamber, aliens continued arguing, but their voices seemed less certain now. "Your species is unlike anything we have encountered," Zethmer said finally. "Good," Amy replied. "That's exactly what we were hoping you'd say 6 months later." Dr. Maya Rodriguez stood in the same radio telescope facility where the whole adventure had started. But now, instead of receiving mysterious signals from space,